All right, let's talk about the journey from 1400 to 1500. One of the first things we're going to see when we look at the requirements to achieve 1500 is that they are very difficult. In a way, it requires what we could call heavy lifting. One of the things, obviously, as you get better in any activity, chess or otherwise, is the further up you go, the more competitive it's going to be and the more difficult it will be to progress. But something that's very satisfying about chess, and I think one of the reasons people pursue it, is that as it becomes more difficult, it also becomes more beautiful. So there's aspects about the game that you're able to both understand and control, and they kind of go hand in hand, because if you can't control it in a way, you don't fully understand it. That as you go up the ranks, it becomes more involved, more abstract, and more beautiful. So that's one of the side effects of improvement, and one of the reasons I think people have stuck with it. Myself, at least I'll speak for myself in that regard. Okay, so let's take a look as we do, and we'll begin with the ratings here. So you see 14 to 1500 is but actually that should read 15 to 16 USCF. ChessCom would be 16, and Lichess 1800. So then we have a huge group here for our scoreboard, and yeah, this is a great group of guys and girls. And one of the things I just want to point out is the Polgar mates, they just get more. So part of the heavy lifting is just to do that. And one of the things I've been watching, we're in it a little bit more than a month now, is who finishes the Polgar mates first. So far, there have been very few people that have been able to do it. But I do know that through listening to people in the Discord that they are working on it and are finding satisfaction in doing it. And so that's just a huge lifting requirement, as it were, that is difficult to achieve, but very much worth it, both for achieving 1500 and then the success beyond. Then another, let's call it, piece of heavy lifting is this REP. That means Rook endgame progression, the Dojo Rook endgame progression that begins with 1400 to 1500. This is something I created. I'll do a special video about this actually soon. Very happy with this. The simple idea is that Rook endgames are hard, and instead of trying to memorize positions, what I do is have you watch a video where I explain this match 1, which is just 10 positions. I explain the positions, and then you try to play them out against someone from your cohort, so somebody from this group. And the idea is that you don't necessarily need to get it 100% right. You just need to get it more right than somebody in your cohort. And so then as you advance, let's say you go to 1500, 1600, there'll be more positions and you'll be playing against somebody a little bit stronger. And that's the thing about Rook endgames. It's a practical skill that needs to be developed. Then we have Simple Chess, a great book, and some openings. By the way, I had all kinds of ideas about where I was going to get pushback, on this program. And I thought maybe the Polgar mate in twos. People have been mostly cool about that. I thought maybe game analysis. I really thought there would be a problem with the game analysis. That hasn't been a problem. But people have been complaining about wanting more openings. But as you see, when we go up the rating bands, we get more and more opening work. And so these are positions that we spar out, and I talk a little bit more about how we do the openings in other videos. Okay, now, the other thing I want to say is we have the classic games over here, and that's 40 games by Botvinnik. Very good, solid work, and you're really getting a taste there for all kinds of aspects of chess, going through Botvinnik's games, but especially a strategic mind that I really encourage people to go over that with other people. You don't have to do all the games with other people, but going over some of those games, at least with people in your cohort, I really recommend. Okay, and then of course, as you see, we have loads of games that people need to do in terms of playing classical games, reviewing them. And then PM just means post-mortems. As you can see, we've got several people doing this. It's a long road. I expect that most people will cross 1,500 before they complete all of these boxes. But the point is, of course, is if somebody hits this, 1,400, let's say they're 1,420 and they've been there for years, if they do this program, the idea is that they will get to 1,500. And that if they finish early, that they will have built some fundamental building blocks for going forward. Okay, now something I want to stress before I go on is that I've said in the earlier videos that now is the time where in this range, all the way from 1,000 to 2,300, where the biggest problem that people have is understanding time, tempo. And we're going to see in the game that we're going to review that is very much going on, though it gets a little bit more involved with every rating step that you go up. Okay, I really enjoyed this game that I'm about to show you. This is between Monkey, oh shoot, if I get his name right, Monkey Elf and MD Knight. And one beautiful thing about this is just the quality of the annotations. Again, I was very concerned at the beginning that people weren't going to know how to annotate their games. They were going to feel insecure about it. I've been teaching chess a long time. It's been very hard for me to get my own students to annotate the games. And something I just want to stress, as you I always show the annotations in these videos. I am not picking and choosing which game to go over. I'm not like looking at a bunch of games and then deciding, oh, this one's better annotated than another one, so I'll pick that. No, I'm literally picking like just the first game that pops in my view when I look into the Dojo database. And I'm not above picking a better annotation if I thought an annotation was poor, but the annotations have been so strong that I can just click on a game and amazingly, I'm getting good annotations every single time, which is, again, the heart of the program. So that's the thing that I'm most excited about the Dojo program in general, is just that the quality of the annotations have been so good. And one of the pillars of the program, of course, is that going over your own games will help you improve more than anything else. All right, so let's take a look at our game. This is between Monkey Elf and MD Knight. And the quality of these annotations are really fantastic. All right, C5, D4. Now, a lot of times when you listen to people online, they love to talk about openings, and they think about openings way too much. And they kind of, let's call it part of their will to power, if you will, is to talk about how some openings are good and some openings are bad and some openings are downright terrible. And one of the things they love to criticize is the Smith-Morra. The Smith-Morra is fine. And one of the things I love about it is that we are trying to gain time. Okay? And there's a variety of things I could say about it, but let's just say that we are gaining time in the opening. All right, I'll say a little bit here. So let's imagine you do a normal open Sicilian, and let's go to a Najdorf. In this position, white is up 3 tempi, and so black has to make very abstract arguments as to why he is okay. It's very controversial and has been since the beginning of time. But it is, in fact, very playable for black. And what we'll say is that part of the problem is that this C2 pawn is not participating in the central fight. And black has an extra center pawn. There's more to say about it than that, but I want to focus on that C pawn for a second, because what we do in the Smith-Morra is we just give it up. Okay, so that's part of the genius of the Smith-Morra gambit. Now, Black has a variety of things to do. Knight f6, d3, takes on c3, d5, all of those are playable moves. e5, I'm not a huge fan, but maybe this is playable. Knight f3, knight c6, pop, pop, pop. Okay. Knight f6, knight c3, bishop b4, and I love white's next move, bishop c4. Great move. One of the things I really love about this move is that it shows that white understands time. Now, one thing about it that I'm going to try to take it to the next level of where I think Monkey Elf was going with this. He says, I ultimately went with bishop c4 because it felt more like a move that followed the spirit of the opening. Now, that's true, but I want to take it to the next level and say, the next level of saying it's the spirit of the opening is to say it's the spirit of time, right? Because if you do not play bishop c4, you have to in some way give up time. For example, if you played f3, that would make me cry. If you played knight takes c6 followed by bishop d3, that would make me cry, right? Because all those moves will help black develop the pieces. So bishop c4 is beautiful. And yes, do you have to do some calculations? Do you have to worry a little bit about knight e4? True, absolutely. So that was what's great about this particular move is now first of all, you have to, in order to play it, you have to understand the value of time, and then you have to do some calculation in the dimension of material. So great move, and MD Knight castles. And what we're going to see is that MD Knight is shying away intuitively from taking stuff, which is probably good. Another interesting move here would be d5 from black, right? Because the knight on c3 is still pinned. But let's give castles a chance. And oh, by the way, we had this amazing variation that Monkey Elf gives, and I like it a lot. Look at this. Queen f3, beautiful. And one thing, maybe a small critique, is it would be good if Monkey Elf gave an evaluation. Is white clearly better? Is he winning? You know, compensation. In any case, I love the white position. Okay, so now MD Knight goes for it. And maybe here, again, d5 would be a more prudent thing to do. And knight e4, of course, needs to take into account the fact that we are really falling behind in development. I do think it might be playable. It might, well, I think it's actually in big trouble to play knight e4, but let's take a look. Knight e4, bishop a3, and rook e8, which would be the natural move, seems very unpleasant because of something like queen f3. It would have been a little bit better if Monkey Elf could have given us a variation after, say, rook e8, queen f3. In particular, the thing that we have to worry about on a move like queen f3 would be d5, right? That's the monkey in the room, the elephant in the room. So maybe queen h5, for example, might be very unpleasant. These are some of the variations I'd like to see. All right, bishop a3, d6. Now, if one thing about these kinds of positions is if black feels it's going really poorly, as I think it is if you're playing d6, then it might be interesting for you to try to sack the exchange with d5. Again, just a variation to look at. And one of the things that you'll see is when strong players are facing the initiative, often what they will do is shed material to get back in the game. And of course, we do have a pawn in hand, so it's conceivable that we might be able to live with a move like d5. Okay, so now an interesting decision for Monkey Elf to play either knight b5 or excuse me, let's put the rook e1 first. I love it. Fantastic. And let's say a couple things. and as I said in the earlier videos, be dogmatic about time. So, for example, we have a bishop out that he does not, we have a rook out that he does not, and it's our move. So what does that mean? It means we're up 3 tempi. Big deal, right? Big deal. Okay, so now we have an interesting decision between knight takes c6, knight b5. And those 3 tempi, again, that's worth a pawn, right? 3 tempi equals a pawn. And especially in an open position like this, we should think that we're close to winning, right? Okay. Now, this is an interesting decision, and let's just pretend that there's only 2 moves. Knight b5 and knight takes c6. Monkey Elf goes with knight takes c6, and there's every reason to believe in it, but it's gonna be, we're gonna find it a little bit difficult. There's gonna be difficulties about it. All right. One thing about knight b5 should be stressed is that there's a positional dream behind knight b5, which is to attain what's usually called the octopus, a knight on d6 or e6, which would be positionally dominating. You will find that in a lot of the classic games that we have in our list. So that's already like the 3rd dimension of chess, quality of position. That's in that rank, right? So that would be, it's got to be said, the objective behind knight b5. Now, what's interesting about this position is I do believe intuitively that white should be either clearly better or winning. And so when we make this decision, knight b5 or knight c6, we should want to buttress it with variations to come up with at least a position that's clearly better for white. Now this variation here, I did here, actually no, I take it back. They did this with knight b5, d5, and this kind of thing. You know, it's hard to know exactly what to do with black, though it's got to be said that black has several different moves here. Maybe bishop g4 might be mildly annoying as well. Excuse me. In any case, let's look at knight c6. Takes rook e8. And here's a very interesting moment. One thing that I want to stress that happens here is a couple interesting things happen here. I think it's a fascinating position. Is that our bishop on d6 looks proud. That's our unopposed bishop, meaning he doesn't have a dark square bishop, so we own the dark squares. The kind of curious thing, though, also that's happening is he's got 2 minors that touch the light squares. So he's got actually a force count dominance on the light squares, which might give him some chances to defend this position. Now, we should believe, I think, that white is doing much better here. But we have to be careful. And surprisingly, after this rook e8 move, I think black is okay, which surprised me, honestly. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And I thought for a long time here, trying to imagine what we should do to retain the advantage. And what I think we need to do is we need to do something a little fancy. And I think it's the move queen f3. And there's the tactical point that the f7 square is going to be hanging after a situation like this. It's a little involved, I grant you. I grant you, right? It's a little bit involved. And of course, the point is we're putting pressure on c6. And maybe also, I was going to say most importantly, but just one of the things to be involved here is when we took on d6, and this is something maybe we needed to be wary of, we kind of developed this queen because now this queen is talking to our bishop. Our bishop is a little loose. And then if we trade on e8, then the danger is that this rook can potentially come to d8. And then we got grief. So, for example, in the game continuation, something that very much surprised me is bishop e6, which Monkey Elf noted, Black is totally fine. Totally fine. And notice what happens here. Black's not that down in time. Rook d8 is about to come, so there's a hassle we're going to probably have to lose another tempo with. And the light squares, d5, e6, are all Black's. Now, one thing I want to stress, I'm going to guess that MD Knight's main concern with this move, bishop e6, was that he was worried about rook e1 and the possible weakening of the pawns. Now, this is a thing that I've coined, a term that I've coined that very much applies to the dimension of time, so I'm going to bring it up here, and that is pawns aren't people. So what I mean is people get obsessed with things like a minor damage to the pawn structure like that, instead of thinking more big picture about, say, the rook needing to go to d8 and the bishop just needing to develop, especially blunting this bishop on c4 who's talking to our king on f7. Further, if he does take, then we have to say, well, that's also time, because at some point both kings are going to need to create a Luft square to get out of dodge. Okay, so it's really here that Black makes a critical mistake, after which he's probably toast, or at least in big trouble. Okay, he plays queen d7 here, and what's the main problem? It's time, and now rook e1 comes, and things are looking bad, and Black immediately falls apart with bishop b7. Okay, we're going to look at the rest of the game quickly, but I want to stress, here was again a moment where Black should try to survive by giving away material. And in fact, taking it wouldn't be necessarily a good thing for White at all, because of bishop b7. But I have a feeling, what is the reason that MD Knight didn't play knight d5? Well, he was worried about his pawns. Pawns at this point are not your problem, right? If we were going to worry about something, it should be this move. But here, maybe we can survive with, let's say here, and if he talks to our f7 pawn, we hold it together. And there might well be a better move here for White, but as you can see, there are chances for Black to survive this position playing on the light squares, bishops of opposite color. Okay, so here it comes. We have to consider that a tempo move. And in terms of the third dimension, quality of position, definitely rooks on the 7th count in that regard. And you can see Black loses time with queen c8. And here I think everything is winning. Rook c7, rook f7. I definitely prefer rook c7 and rook f7 over bishop f7. So I'm happy with rook f7, knight d5, boom. And this is a winning position. I'm not going to spend too much on here because White actually plays this more or less okay, but I do want to stress one feature of the position here is that White played c4 and he's unsure about it. And here's a very simple thing about just chess in general that we should be aware of, and that the Monkey Elf should be aware of. The reason that c4 is heretical, you're still winning the game after c4, but the reason c4 is heretical is because the pawn on d5 is making the bishop on b7's life miserable, absolutely miserable. And the bishop itself will be hunted if it's run out of squares, hunted by the queen. So good moves here would be queen d4, as I think you mentioned, and another solid move would be f3 to give the king some luft, which he's eventually going to need. Nota bene that f3, just in principle, in terms of which luft move you'd make, is the one to do to blunt the bishop on b7, right? Why? Well, maybe someday he should be thinking about playing d4. To get some kind of counterplay. If we're going to hope for anything for Black, that's what it'd be. And why am I stressing that? Because c4 opens the bishop. Now, the good news is Monkey Elf played reasonably well to finish Black off. The game progressed, but white is totally winning, especially after he gets that a-pawn. Okay, so there it is, the path to 14 to 1500. As you can see, the annotations here are great. That is the heart of the program. And I'll finish by saying anyone can do the things that we're talking about in the dojo program, but joining the dojo program will simply help you do it a little bit more efficiently. Okay, till the next time when we'll talk about making it to the next level.